So it's a very rich topic. And I would like to thank you for joining us and for contributing to this issue, how we can improve all the issues. But let me first tell you a little bit. My name is Chris de Noza. I'm the president of MEDCON. I think that's not that important. What's more important is that I tell you what's MEDCON. And MEDCON is the Mediterranean Confederation. And this is an alliance amongst organizations from France, Morocco, Turkey, Tunisia, and Belgium. I'm the Belgian one. So which we aim, and that's important, to promote socio-economic cooperation in the Mediterranean basin, in the Mediterranean region. So it's not only about social, but it's also about economic. It's a very broad objective that we have within MEDCON. And under the name of MEDCON, we have presented this alliance event in Barcelona some years ago, but the founding members are the Caixa Foundation, I think is the third or fourth largest foundation in Europe, the WSBI that I'm representing, the World Saving Retail Banking Institute, IEMed, which is the European Institute of the Mediterranean, so from Spain, IPMed, which is the Institute Economic Forecasting World Mediterranean from France. It has similar objectives as IEMed. The Caisse de dépôt et de consignation de la Tunisie, Caisse de dépôt et de gestion du Maroc, as we have Fatima with us, and TEPAF, which is the Economic Policy Research Foundation of Turkey, and finally also Al Barid Bank from Morocco, ABB. So those are currently the founding members from MEDCON. Ladies and gentlemen, companies, corporations, civil society leaders, networks, associations, and foundations are all invited to join this fantastic initiative. Many of such entities are well established in their respective areas of activity, but they do not have many connections among themselves. And that's one of the objectives of MEDCON, to bring things together and to try to coordinate. But about our topic of today, young people, and we are focusing on young people 15 to 24 years old. As you know, they are making up a significant share of the population in the southern and eastern Mediterranean countries, where the median age is under 30 years, under 30 years old. And this young population, despite having access to education, is facing shortage on economic opportunities. Young people have indeed 3 times more risks to be unemployed than their elders, which has been considerably aggravated by the COVID crisis, by the COVID pandemic. And when transitioning the adulthood or to adulthood, access to finance plays a key role. Yet, youth are often excluded from access to formal financial services. And this is particularly true in southern and eastern Mediterranean countries. According to the global Findex data, only 30% or 32% of the young adults of the MENA region are financially included, being the lowest rate worldwide. Young unemployment is one of the major challenges. Significant average gap between European countries that have low youth unemployment rates, such as Germany, where the unemployment rate for 15 to 24 years old is only 7.2%. And Southern Europe, youth unemployment rates stand at 51.4% in Spain, 50.6% in Greece, 48% in Croatia, and 42% in Italy. So I could continue, but very high. Over the past few years only. So North African and Middle Eastern countries had the highest rates of youth unemployment in the world. Socio-political context in the region makes the task of tackling youth unemployment extremely complex due to destabilizing political forces, exacerbating insecurity and hurting business climate, which are also so important for job creation. Libya and Syria have been immersed in a crisis for the past 5 years. 3 Mediterranean countries are absorbing the bulk of Syrian refugees, namely Jordan, more than 500,000, 654,000, Lebanon, 1.1 million, Turkey, 1.5 million. So it are really speaking figures, as I would say. So, but this proves that our topic of today, financial inclusion, youth, focusing on the youth, it's a very important topic. And I'm so happy to have good speakers, to have experts who can really contribute to the debate. So I wish you a lot of success, a fruitful webinar, and maybe it's the beginning of other webinars, because it's only 1 hour and a half, and I think the subject is very large. But I would like to return now the word to our moderator. Moderator, thank you very much for giving me the floor, and nice webinar. Maybe I will come back with some questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this introduction. First of all, I would like to say good morning to all and hope you are all doing well and importantly healthy in these difficult circumstances. My name is Habib Atia. I am from the Arab Monetary Fund, and I'm heading the Financial Inclusion and Payment System agenda in the region. So it's really a pleasure for me to be here today and chair this inspiring panel to talk about this important topic about financial inclusion for youth, and how this agenda is growing up and important for both, I would say, private sector and policymakers. Let me once again express my special thanks and appreciation to our colleagues at MED Confederation for reaching out to the Arab Monetary Fund and our landmark Financial Inclusion for the Arab Region initiative to collaborate in organizing this webinar. So just before we get started, and to make sure that our online discussion will be conducted smoothly, 2 elements, so 2 housekeeping notes from my side. The first, the format of the webinar. Personally, I will be providing a brief overview on the topic just to set the scene, and then my prominent speakers, 4 speakers, will take over. It will last around an hour, and then we will take more or less 20 minutes for Q&A session with the audience. So please, all participants, drop your questions on the chat box, and our support team will bring them into the attention of the panel. We recommend, of course, to focus your questions on the topics and the topic we are discussing today, but definitely my colleagues from the panel will be happy to respond to your question and to answer your question. Great. So what brings us together today is that we all care about financial inclusion, of course, ensuring that people and businesses can access and use financial services and products. And this is important, but most importantly is to be to have this access in a responsible and sustainable manner. This is the core question today that my colleagues will address. Actually, the backdoor financially underserved or excluded population and parts of an economy represent a tremendous potential for both private sector growth and national development goals. So let me just point out some rationale about how this topic is important and should take care about it, which is actually in the top agenda of the IMF, on policymakers in the Arab region, but also in the policymakers in North Mediterranean countries. First, I would like to take you through youth in the Arab region, or in our region, Mediterranean region, and why they are a special target group for financial inclusion. And I totally agree with Chris when he stated in talking about the employment rate. Actually, children and young population in the Arab region up to 24 years old account for nearly half of the population, and youth employment reaching around 26%, which is actually doubled the world average, and mainly concentrated in the youth category between 15 and 24 years old. In addition, and according to a recent estimation at the Arab Monetary Fund, we expect and we anticipate by 2030, our region will have 40 million new labor market entrants, equals approximately 27% increase. And we anticipate that the employment rate to increase up to 49% by 2040 if there is no a serious change in the adopted economic and development models, including, of course, the access to finance and the financial sector in general as a cornerstone for this development. Likewise, our region also is recording among the largest gender gap worldwide, as the female labor force participation today stands at around 20.7%, which represents actually less than half of the global average, which is 24.7%. On top of that, the COVID-19 has even intensified the employment challenges in the region. Our recent empirical research as well conducted at the IMF confirmed that asymmetric effects of the business cycles on employment, and it showed actually that the employment is highly affected in times of recessions than in time of expansion, which is normal situation, which should be actually considered by policymakers in their expectation of the effects of the COVID-19 crisis and the associated policy responses. All these figures, in fact, urge the need to increase the access to finance, as the percentage of individual today with account in financial institution in the region stands at just about 37% compared to 68% for the world average. While banking credit for facilities extend to the SMEs or small businesses or startups account only for 9% of the total banking credit facilities. So why this situation, and what are the main barriers preventing the youth from accessing financial services in the region? I would say 4 elements. The first one is maybe the legal and regulatory framework governing the financial sector in general in the Arab region or in the region in general. The second, most likely, it will be the inadequate and inaccessible financial services at some extent, particularly before we move into the digital era. Of course, there is a risk and transaction costs, which are very high in the region, and as well the low financial literacy and capabilities among the consumers. So, yet removing all these obstacles definitely will support expanding access and the usage of financial services. So, where we are heading now with the financial system transformation in our region. Of course, the core of this transformation, as you can imagine, it will be built on the digital, and the management of new risk are very important and are key to succeed this transition. In fact, from our side at the IMF, we are seeing the 2 key factors that can support unlocking the potential of financial inclusion in the region. The first is to facilitate the access to liquidity by all consumers, either individual or businesses, through a set of financial service providers. Of course, meaning that we need to expand the basis of the financial service providers in the region with access to a common financial infrastructure. And here, I think it's a key. We have seen over the last years how the financial sector in the region is fragmented between the banking sector and non-banking financial institutions, and also the insurance market. All of those players in the financial sector, from our standpoint, have to have the same access to the same infrastructure, and this is critical. The second element and the second driver for this transformation is to speeding up the digital financial services, and this is also a key. Of course, we have the traditional cross-cutting priorities that need to be considered throughout the process of transforming financial services in the region. Of course, addressing these priorities is also key, such as, of course, regulation from supervision point of view, consumer protection, financial education, literacy, and so on. In fact, these 2 priorities have also been identified recently and emphasized by the Arab central banks and the IMF under the Financial Inclusion for the Arab Region initiative of course, with support of our partners, the World Bank Group, the GIZ, and the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. We have conducted an extensive consultation among our member countries, this consultation led to actually to this to priorities on which we are intensifying now the work of FIARI initiative. Here, what I would like to stress again is the attention that is given by the IMF, the FIARI, or all, I would say, stakeholders, financial sector stakeholders, on top of them, the Arab central banks, to support this transformation or transforming an old economic financial system into an inclusive new economic based digital financial services, of course, by promoting the usage of the services, by building and using the latest wave of innovative technology in all domain of finance, not only in the infrastructure or in payment, but covering the whole ecosystem. So guidance for digital financial transformation absolutely can help to promote innovative fintech models that we have seen right now in Europe, in Latin America, in Asia, but also in the region over the last few years. Here, I would like to emphasize maybe two key element. The first is about the fast development of fintech solutions in the region. Actually, and according to a study that has been released by CGAP in 2019, there are more than 330 fintech solutions operating across the 22 Arab countries. This tremendous growth of fintech solutions in the region over the last decade of course, is due and supported by multiple market drivers. For instance, the the well-educated and tech-savvy young population in the region, record level of remittances. When we look at the cross-border remittances in the region, for instance, we are more in terms of the inflows, we are more about $60 billion a year, and the vast market potential for impact population. Here, I'm referring particularly to the rural area, to the people who are living in the remote area, where the new financial service providers who are using the new technology are reaching out to them. And of course, all in the region, we are very, very keen about how to address the massive funding gap for the millions of businesses in the region. The second one is actually, despite that roughly 85% of adults in the region have access to a mobile phone, and 48% have access to both mobile phone and internet connection. Mobile, unfortunately, and however, mobile money account ownership in the region stands at only 7%. And only 33% of adults made or received digital payment in the last few years. So if we compare this figure with the 44% of adults in other regions, so here we will see absolutely the gap that need to be addressed. So these figures, if I would say, they show us how the enormous untapped opportunities are now in front of both the financial service providers and consumers, coupled, of course, with the emergence of an advanced technology-driven innovation in finance that offers a new way and solution to tackle further this small-scale but growing markets in the region. In a similar but separate manner, I would say the opportunity is also there for banks and other financial service providers, which are very important in the financial sector development, as the projected important advance in financial infrastructure, especially in digital identity, for instance, that can be linked to bank account, will provide actually commercial banks and financial institutions with an opportunity to reduce the cost of customer onboarding and ongoing compliance. This is actually, it will address one of the major constraints for the financial inclusion in the Arab region, which is the cost related to the financial services. So this enables, in fact, financial institutions to reach hundreds million of new customers in the region. When we look at how many people now are not embedded in the financial sector, or even they are in the financial sector, but unfortunately they are not using the financial services. This is actually is very important to make sure that the financial sector or financial inclusion in the Arab region is inclusive, of course, but providing a suitable and affordable product and services to all consumers. So digital financial inclusion for youth people, we think that it's a fundamental building block for financial inclusion. As I mentioned before, it's one of the key pillars that we are working on at FIARI, IEMed, and our partners such as GIZ. So access to digital financial service for youth people is, of course, an important element to drive financial inclusion. And this is, if you remember, in Saudi Arabia 2020 G20 presidency, youth financial inclusion alongside of women and MSMEs was set as a priority policy that that at the end of this presidency have been endorsed and adopted by the G20, and now is taken over by the Italian presidency, of course, including the aspects related to payment and cross-border payment and so on. So here in general, when we talk about the digital financial services or digital financial infrastructure, here it is absolutely necessary condition that need to be created actually. There's different conditions, the different elements that need to be created. We can think about the robust and the resilient digital infrastructure, which is a key, but also there is other elements that need to be considered, including the access to technology. I'm here thinking about the access to mobile phone, to tablets, to different devices that we can use, and financial services on them. But actually, the most important is a reliable electricity network, which is a key basic infrastructure. Based on this momentum in the region, at the MF, GIZ, and FIARI partners, we have come up last September with what we call the regional approach for digital financial transformation in the Arab region. And here, what I would like to stress is how Arab region is looking at these reforms as an important means to establish a safe digital environment to produce both socio-economic impact, but a commercial gains. For instance, when we look from commercial hands, it is estimated that additional financial inclusion in the Arab countries will bring by 2024 an additional revenue potential of $7 billion for the private sector. And I'm sure maybe on this point, my friend Wissam will jump on it and talk more about how the private sector is looking at it, but is absolutely a key today. Of course, we need, when we have all this in mind, we need to take into consideration also the challenges and the risks associated with the new technology and with this shift, because by the end of the day, we are moving people, we are asking people to change the behavior in terms of dealing with the banks in the region. So this actually the framework that has been designed and endorsed by our member countries. Of course, it was driven by the global and the G20, for instance, principle on the high-level principle for digital financial services, but also from some priorities and some, I mean, the context of the region and the articulation of this framework of coverage from the access through, of course, through the technology to the usage of the financial services, including some cross-cutting issues related to how to empower consumers and build capacities and mitigate the risks. Last but not least from my side, it's very quickly and regarding the priority of the G20, we are talking about the payment. We have established recently the Buna payment platform, which is a cross-border payment, a centralized multi-currency cross-border payment system that clear and process almost near real-time payment system in the region. And absolutely how we are seeing this platform at the MF and FIARI as really a driver to support the cross-border remittances, the low-value remittances that by the end of the day will support financial inclusion. So I will not take more than that for this introduction. I would like to invite now my first speaker in this panel, Ingrid Schweger, who is the Deputy Head of Unit, Regional Program, Regional Program Director General for Neighborhood and Enlargement Negotiation at the European Commission. Ingrid will talk us about the perspective of the European Commission on the topic of youth financial inclusion in the southern countries, present and future initiative within the southern countries, policy cooperation and opportunity from their side. Ingrid, I give you back the floor.
Thank you very much, Habib, and also many thanks for the invitation to join this panel of really experts from the financial sector and from research institutions on this key topic. As you said, my name is Ingrid Schweiger. I work in the European Commission in Brussels, in the department dealing what we call the Neighborhood South region, which is North Africa and the Middle East. And there I work on economic issues. I have prepared a short PowerPoint presentation. I hope it can be uploaded in the meanwhile as we talk. Excellent. And perhaps just to start, I mean, you gave a very comprehensive overview on why the subject is so important, financial inclusion on the one hand, and then youth financial inclusion. And just to say that also from the EU side, it's a key pillar of the EU strategy. We mainly see it, I'm coming mainly from the economic angle, so seeing youth as an economic actor in the context of private sector development. And I think it's very creative and innovative what you are doing to connect the topic of financial inclusion with very targeted on youth financial inclusion. And there I have to say you are a bit ahead of our thinking. We are with the broader financial inclusion topic as such. There is a focus on youth. There's a focus on youth as the economic actor. And what I want to give you is a very brief overview on, what are the main tools on financial inclusion on the one hand side, and then also give you some examples how the EU works to encourage youth employment and youth entrepreneurship. Let me start with the financial inclusion. I mean, it was already mentioned by the introduction. The large number of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in the region, in the Arab region, with a very large potential for expansion and job creation. And here we look from the EU as a partner to support policies and tools in the partner countries in the region. We mainly focus on the smaller segments, the micro and the small ones, because there the expansion, the potential is biggest to create jobs and mainly also to attract young people. We already said access to finance is limited for different reasons by local banks. So we need really supply and demand measures to facilitate access to finance and the financial inclusion. Next, please. In that respect, I wanted to just say a word about an EU initiative we have for the southern neighborhood, so for North Africa and the Middle East countries, which is called the EU Initiative for Financial Inclusion. How do we work there? We work through something we call blending with financial institutions using the Neighborhood Investment Platform. And blending means the EU supports with grant funding. It's mixed with the financial instruments from the banks to provide a comprehensive support for SME finance. And there, under this EU initiative for financial inclusion, we work with several, here in this case, it's the European banks to start with. It's the European Investment Bank, EBRD, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau in Germany, or Agence Française de Développement. And this initiative, we have provided 150 million grants from the Commission. This is mixed with the funding from these financial institutions to mobilize through this leveraging 1.2 billion funding. And here the potential is really to reach more than 200,000 small, micro and small enterprises in the region. Next, please. This is just a quick overview table of what type of instruments. For example, with Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, there is the Standard Fund for microfinance. So for very small entrepreneurial activities, there is larger activities with the European Investment Bank on risk capital. With EBRD, it's advisory services for small businesses to help them, but also a financial inclusion credit line. And with AfD, we start a guarantee fund. Next, please. Here, the approach is to reach impact, scale, and coordination with the different actors. It's focused on inclusion. So these instruments, not entirely, but a good part targets women entrepreneurs. There are some percentages which the banks have to fulfill. There is also an effort to support young entrepreneurs and to also ensure, for us, that's also important for inclusion, the territorial balance. So not only talking about customers and clients in the capitals, but also in the different parts of the country. So to have also including the remote regions, secondary cities, and so on. So this is important, the inclusion and also the market development, that by these instruments, we support also new institutions and new actors. I use this EU initiative for financial inclusion as an example, because something similar but much broader in scale is now being done under what we call the European Fund for Sustainable Development, where we use the same principle, the mixing of grant money and financial instruments. But, and that's the new element, also a substantial use of guarantees to de-risk investments. So to bring in the private sector more forcefully, but for these financial inclusion aims where usually they wouldn't go, to bring in the private sector for support to young entrepreneurs, which are more risky. They don't have a track record, for women entrepreneurs and so forth. Next, please. So this is on the finance side. I mentioned in the beginning that we have to work both on the supply and the demand side. And I wanted just to give you a bit of our approach on how we work, you know, also more regionally, beyond the financial instruments, with youth and youth as an economic actor and entrepreneurship. The overarching principle is really an economy that works for people. This is also one of the big motives within Europe and the European Union. Following COVID, there is a realization that the economy really has to adopt a much more people-centered approach and have a clear impact on society. So here the main objective is to deliver on the decent job creation and to tackle inequality. And as I said already, this focus is on specific actors of the economy, which are currently underserved, vulnerable groups in that region. There's a lot also in the Middle East, refugee impact and inflow, displaced people, but women and youth as well. We do this also by promoting new business models and actors. And here I just want to mention the social economy and social entrepreneurship, but also the whole area of innovation and startups. Both are areas which are very much appealing to young people. And that goes along also with the promotion of alternative finance tools. I mean, I have already mentioned microfinance, but for example, we are exploring also impact investment, because there is a need to have tools which are really adopted to this target group as well, and adopted to the inclusiveness idea behind it. And then you probably also have heard about the sustainable finance, which is mainly on the green transition and on the whole climate change agenda. So to make sure that finance also incorporates these principles. Next, please. I'm working on regional cooperation, and here we use this pilot function where we can compare different experiences in different countries and models to share them and to learn from them. And in the following, I want to give you a few examples of this, more innovative business models on social entrepreneurship, what type of actions we support for youth and job creation. Next, please. One regional initiative I want to mention is Next Society. That's really on entrepreneurship and innovation, working with a very large network of EuroMed innovation stakeholders. So this covers the whole ecosystem, but as part of that, it also focuses on entrepreneurs, and this is very often it's young entrepreneurs, to support and accelerate the changes in the region and to tackle the new challenges, be it the access to resources, be it in food dependency areas, be it in fintechs on technology. I mean, this is more detailed information. If you want more information, I always mentioned also the implementing partner in case you want to be in touch later on. Next, please. Two more examples then of the social economy. This is a 4 years initiative at regional level on the social economy ecosystem. And there we support on the one hand, policy advocacy. In some countries like Morocco and Tunisia, this is quite advanced. There's a specific legal framework on the role of social economy. So there's an advocacy part of it. Then there is a part which really works with institutions, specialized business support institutions in these areas. And a last component targets social entrepreneurs with small grants and mentoring to scale up their initiative and to make them very visible in the region. So this will be widely disseminated on a regional platform. Next one. And here I come to my last example, Saphir. Again, a regional initiative, which while MEDUP is targeting established social entrepreneurs, so those which exist already, to scale them up. This here goes a level to the micro level. It's aimed at the inclusion of young people. It starts already at university. So it works with university graduates, and it supports incubators at the universities to develop economic ideas, develop ideas on social entrepreneurship. And it also involves many stakeholders, also from the public sphere, to open the space for a public-private dialogue. I will come to the end of my short talk with the next slide, please. Just to say, what we have seen so far is that these models also, they're very appealing to young people, but also to women entrepreneurs. It's really growing ground for, it's a good tool and a good way for job creation. And the same is true within the European Union. So in the EU, we had 20% of all the startups which fall into this category. They face many constraints on the legal level, the status of social entrepreneurs and so on. It's not yet clear, but also on access to finance. And there, allow me to make the loop back to this financial youth inclusion, where we also should think about new types of inclusive finance to be explored. And there ourselves, but here we are at the start to do this study on impact investment and a mapping on what exists already in the region. I hope I could give you a short overview of what the European Commission in the region is doing in this field, both on financial inclusion, but also on youth as an economic actor. And I'm very interested in the following debate, how you link then the youth financial inclusion, which is for us really the new element. So thank you very much, and back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, for the very informative presentation and very clear messages regarding how the European Union is looking to this important topic of financial inclusion. I have one question, but I think we are running a little bit out of time. I may get back to you regarding the topic of dimension of the responsible finance, which is actually the paradigm of financial inclusion is shifting from the traditional to the new one in the digital era, including the responsibility of the different stakeholders. I may get back to you with this question later on. Let me move to my second speaker, who is Wissam Fattouh, who is Secretary General of the Union of Arab Banks. Wissam will be talking about, I would say, the private sector, the commercial bank point of view, and how they see the financial inclusion, how they can support, and what they are doing currently in supporting financial inclusion in the region, both from a product point of view, but also from awareness and education and literacy standpoints. Wissam, over to you, and please let's try to meet just 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you so much, Habib. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the MED Confederation for inviting me to speak at this webinar. Habib, my remarks, it's like we'll divide it into 4 sections actually within the time frame. The section 1, I'm gonna speak about the reality check, what we have in the Arab world, which is a little bit frustrated. Section number 2, the role of technology in financial inclusion. Section number 3, the role of the government and the public-private partnership. And of course, section number 4 will talk about the financial literacy, as you just mentioned. First, allow me to highlight the situation of the financial inclusion in the Arab region. The Arab region still records the lowest level in the world, unfortunately, in terms of financial inclusion. The latest available data indicated that only about 37% of adults in the Arab region own bank accounts, meaning that 63% of adults are excluded from obtaining formal financial services and finance. Now, again, the latest available data also showed that 79% of youth aged between 15 and 24 years in the Arab region do not have bank accounts in any official financial institution, which is also, unfortunately, the lowest percentage in the world. Arab women, on the other hand, still suffer from exclusion in banking and finance, where only 25.6% of women owned bank account in 2017. You know, World Bank issued their statistic every 4 years, and in 2020, they did not issue it yet. So I'm talking about some figures, which is like 3 to 4 years old. However, not too much changes from 2017 till now. So the women, like around 26% maximum, own a bank account compared to 48% of men. This also reflects the large gap in financial inclusion between genders. In the Arab rural areas, the percentage of account was 27.8%, which is also a very low percentage worldwide. Moreover, there is still considerable discrepancy between these countries. For instance, the latest data released by World Bank showed in 2017, the percentage of account ownership was to some extent high in some countries like UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait, like almost 80%. while it did not exceed 25% in Yemen, Djibouti, Sudan, Mauritania, Iraq, and Syria. You know, UAB has a lot of paper and research about that. I'm very happy to share with you at a later stage those papers. We have a total breakdown for all the countries with each country and percentage. There's 3 categories in the Arab world. There's high financial inclusion, like the countries that I mentioned, UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait, medium, and low. A survey conducted also by World Bank on the cause of financial inclusion showed that why we have this financial inclusion, and this is very, very interesting point that I will explain later and connect it with other factors. First, 83% of the financially excluded in Egypt state that the main reason of not having a bank account is the lack of insufficient fund and guarantees. And this makes increased presentation very, very interesting. What the European Union has, those initiatives that they have funding for SME and MS and microfinance, and this has helped a lot. And by the way, this figure in Egypt in particular has changed because we have witnessed last year a very important initiatives coming from the government itself. We'll talk about it later. 54 of the financially excluded Tunisian states listed as the main reason. That's why they don't have a bank account. 71% stated the high cost of financial services, and 55% the lack of trust in financial institutions. Now, distance, of course, we have solution with the technology. Lack of trust in financial institutions, I would say the lack of financial literacy in the Arab world. So, and this is also another point that we need to take care of. Point number 4, 34% of the financially excluded in Libya suffer from the lack of documents necessary to open an account. 18% of the financially excluded Jordanians stated that the religious obstacles are the main reason behind exclusion. And this is where we might need more Islamic banks in the region. Now, role of technologies. Over the past few years, financial technology, fintech, represented a revolution in the global financial systems with an aim to meet the need and providing the services to various economic segments in an advanced way that compete with the traditional financial services in terms of speed, cost, and volume. Note that the fintech includes financial products and services that rely on technology, aiming to improve the quality of traditional financial and banking services, make them faster, cheaper, simpler, and accessible to a greater number of individuals who do not deal with banks due to cost, distance, or due to the complicated requirement to open a financial account. And here what we are talking about the compliance requirement. In most cases, these financial services and products are created and developed by startup companies in the field of financial technology, which are modern companies that aim to improve banking and financial services for individuals and institutions in cooperation or in competition with the existing financial services provider, mainly banks. Consequently, fintech startups have successfully offered a variety of financial services that include payments, digital currencies, money transfer, lending, crowdfunding, wealth management, and insurance services. This represents a challenge to the future of traditional financial services in light of increasing growth of these emerging companies, as well as the speed of innovation and technological solutions they offer. You know, Michael Corbat of Citibank Group, he said once, in the future, we see ourselves as a technology company with a banking license. That's the Citigroup CEO. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, fintech play an important role in addressing the challenges of promoting financial inclusion. And this is, I say, probably away from the lack of a real strategy from the government. So now the technology play a role of facilitating the financial inclusion. Not only financial inclusion, but it's also inclusive growth and economic diversification. through the innovation that help provide financial services to the large segment of the population, does not deal with the banking system and facilitates the availability of alternative resources of financing for small and medium enterprises in particular. Where for long-term, high-cost, long distances, required collateral and guarantees have been a major obstacle in integrating them in the formal financial system. One more point I would like to add for the technology, the spread, everybody agree with that, the spread of COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting repeated lockdown has amplified the role of financial technology, which is emerged as one of the most important means to mitigate the repercussion of the pandemic. Although digital financial operation has spread over the past few years, the pandemic promoted a broader, deeper dependence on technology, resulting in more investment in technology and stimulated the usage of financial technology in new eras. Now, my third part of my remark, the role of government, which is that this point is very, very important point, even to the banking sector. You know, the point of view in the banking sector, if you look at the bank, you know, the banks are commercial institutions. They would be more happy to deal with the corporate and gain more profit than dealing with a large number of small and medium enterprises or any financial inclusion. However, if we have some government initiative, like we witnessed in Egypt, that's different. If we have some recommendation and instruction from the central bank, that makes a lot of difference because banks has to follow that. I'll give you an example. Even with a great effort executed in the Arab region to promote financial inclusion, financial crisis, as example, that emerge from time to time result in the breakdown the level of financial inclusion. For instance, Lebanon, unfortunately, is facing a considerable financial exclusion and large-scale shift to a cash-based economy due to the economic, financial, and banking crisis it faces since October 2019. These crises have forced Lebanese people to resort to non-formal financial channels, and their dealing with banks has considerably declined. In contrast, go to other countries, political and economic stability proved to represent a major booster for a financial inclusion. In this regard, Egypt as an example, then I'll give you one more example in Egypt. The new Swiss Canal public investment program, launched in 2015, collected 64 billion Egyptian pounds. At that time, it was like $10 billion. About half of that amount came from the outside the banking system. The money was in the houses, and they invest in this program. And this is definitely the biggest financial inclusion that Egypt witnessed, because everybody now, they open an account and they buy this program, and they buy this, they participate in the investment program for Swiss Canal. This way, that was a large-scale financial inclusion, as the individual investors had to bring their hidden cash to the banking sector in order to purchase the investment certificates. Moreover, the Central Bank of Egypt launched a comprehensive strategy for financial inclusion in 2017, and recently another mortgage financing initiative was launched by President Sisi, President of the Republic of Egypt, dedicated for a low-income Egyptian people. And this is also a very important initiative when President Sisi make an order that banks should lend a low-income people and to lend a housing loan for 3% interest for 30 years in Egyptian pound. You know how many people apply for such a loan? And most of those has no bank account. Now they do have a bank account. Section number 3, part number 3, the financial literacy as the prerequisite of financial inclusion. After the 2008 global financial crisis, financial education has gained a prominent place in the agendas of the government and international bodies, and has become a prerequisite for achieving financial stability. 3 key principles endorsed by G20 leaders. Number 1, innovative financial inclusion, that in 2010. Consumer financial protection, 2011. National strategy for financial education, 2012. These principles reflect the growing importance of financial education and financial inclusion around the world. Moreover, in 2016, the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion issued a new high principle to promote digital financial inclusion, and where digital technologies can help reach more people at lower cost, including those who live in rural and remote areas. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, also the OECD emphasized that financial literacy is an essential life skill that can make a critical difference in people's lives, opportunities, and success, and is the cornerstone of well-being, entrepreneurship, social mobility, and inclusive growth. Also, Union of Arab Banks has a very good initiative since 5 years, since 2015. We have trained more than 15 students to financial literacy in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Tunisia, and Morocco, and many countries. We invite students to participate in our seminar. We invite students especially for give them a seminar and awareness training on financial literacy. And I think this is very helpful for the future. And by the way, I want to announce that UAB now is cooperating with IMF, International Monetary Fund, that we have a very good initiative. We're gonna spread the word or ask the banks to start open an account for students starting 6 years old. It can be a new account or it can be a sub account from their parents, even by $100. So this is something that we are on table now, and I think it's gonna be very good for the future. Last but not least, the Arab countries have made progress over the past decade. Although I showed some figures, which is not a good figure, but I think since 2017 to now, a lot of organizations have been put a lot of effort, like Arab Monetary Fund, like European Union, OECD, UAB, and other organizations. And so those countries progress over the past decade in terms of level of financial literacy, financial education initiatives, and financial inclusion, thanks to the joint effort of banks, central bank, government, and various non-profit organizations. However, the Arab region still lags behind other regions where there is still a great potential for raising level of financial inclusion and culture change. And I think this is very, very important. We need to change the culture of the region. And I think this is very good, as you all know that 60% of the population in the Arab world are at age of 30 or even below. So culture change and using digital and using technology is quite easy in the Arab world. I thank you so much for your attention. If the time allow, I have some recommendation, Habib, at the end of this webinar, if you allow me and Union of Arab Banks to mention those recommendations. Thank you.
Wissam, thank you very much for the great presentation. I think you made a very, very clear overview about the financial inclusion, and particularly from the commercial banks and banking sector perspective in the region. And I'm personally very happy, since I'm coming from a regional organization, the Arab Monetary Fund, that we have the same thinking. We are joining forces, because I think by the end of the day, you touched a very important point regarding public policy dialogue. I think this is now it's a must. It has to be set. And thank you so much again, Wissam. So given the time, I may get back to you. I have a few questions, and even I got some questions also from the audience right now on the chat box. I will summarize them at the end and get back to all speakers. Let me move to my third speaker. You know, this webinar, it's organized in both languages, English and French, with the simultaneous translation. Let me shift to French. pour saluer Madame Fatima Zahra Aziz. Madame Fatima Zahra Aziz est directrice exécutive de la Fondation marocaine pour l'éducation financière. Fatima va nous parler un petit peu de l'importance de l'éducation financière dans les services financiers, dans le secteur financier, particulièrement dans l'inclusion financière. Naturellement, elle va utiliser son expérience passée à la Banque El Maghreb en tant que directrice de la formation. Elle parle un petit peu des différents programmes qui sont aujourd'hui mis en place au Maroc pour l'éducation financière. Personnellement, j'ai été, le FMA aussi, on a été très ravis en 2016, 2017, 2018, travailler avec la Banque El Maghreb sur l'éducation financière. Donc, Fatima, je te donne la parole. Essaye de tenir la présentation moins de 10 minutes. Et comme ça, on va donner un petit peu de l'espace pour les questions. Donc, c'est à toi, Fatima.
Merci beaucoup, Habib. Je tiens tout d'abord à remercier. Vous m'écoutez? Vous m'entendez?
Oui, parfaitement.
Oui,
5 sur 5.
Très bien, merci. Donc, je tiens tout d'abord à remercier MED Confederation pour l'invitation et pour cette opportunité de discuter d'un sujet très important, notamment et particulièrement dans le contexte actuel du Covid et son impact sur des populations telles que les jeunes, objet de notre webinaire, et également les femmes. Donc, merci pour l'invitation et puis merci d'être parmi les honorables panélistes pour discuter de ce sujet. Effectivement, donc, sujet qui est devenu très important, qu'il a été, mais qui est devenu encore plus important ces dernières années. Nous le vivons de la même manière, je dirais, dans la plupart des pays, même les plus développés, avec une acuité au niveau de certains pays méditerranéens qui ont leurs particularités, notamment celles du Sud et de l'Est. Mon intervention, donc mes collègues qui m'ont précédé, ont largement parlé de l'inclusion financière dans différents pays arabes, de la situation. Également, Ingrid, de par son expérience dans le cadre de la coopération Nord-Sud. Mon intervention, je vais l'axer plus particulièrement sur le rôle et l'importance de l'éducation financière dans l'inclusion financière des jeunes à travers l'expérience du Maroc de manière générale, mais je crois que ça concernerait tous les pays de la région. S'il vous plaît, slide suivante. Donc, je vais commencer, si vous permettez, par très rapidement un état des lieux au Maroc. Ensuite, les financiers particulièrement pour le digital, vous l'avez dit tous que le digital est un levier incontournable aussi bien pour la que pour la financière des jeunes. Très connectés, on le sait. Suivant, s'il vous plaît. Alors, pour ce qui est de l'inclusion financière au Maroc, ça fait plus d'une dizaine d'années que le sujet est important au niveau de plusieurs pays dans le Maroc. Quelques faits marquants, c'est en 2014, la conduite entre la Banque mondiale et la Banque El Maghreb, la Banque centrale du Maroc, de l'enquête sur la capacité financière, donc Financial Capability, qui a fait ressortir un certain nombre d'informations et de données et de constats qui ont conduit à la mise en place à la définition du premier plan stratégique d'éducation financière. Ensuite, 2015-2016, état des lieux en matière d'inclusion financière et lancement des travaux de définition de la SNIF, enquête Findex de la Banque mondiale avec Banque El Maghreb aussi en 2017, qui a été donc à la base de la formulation et de la définition de la stratégie nationale d'inclusion financière qui a été lancée, dont la mise en œuvre a été lancée exactement en 2019. La SNIF, donc très rapidement, en quelques mots, a permis, donc, à travers une approche sectorielle centrée également sur les cibles prioritaires, cibles qui ont été identifiées à travers les constats et les données résultats des enquêtes annoncées, donc sur la Financial Capability, mais aussi sur Findex, l'utilisation des services financiers de manière générale. et a fait identifier plusieurs leviers stratégiques tels que le paiement mobile, la microfinance, l'assurance inclusive, la dématérialisation des paiements et j'en passe. En termes de population prioritaire, nous retrouvons bien sûr les femmes, les ruraux, les jeunes 15-24 ans, objet de notre webinaire, et puis la TPE. Et je voudrais préciser à ce niveau-là que, au fait, ces différentes populations ciblées ne sont pas cloisonnées. Donc, quand on va aborder les jeunes, on va retrouver les femmes à l'intérieur de la grande population jeune, on va retrouver les jeunes au niveau de la TPE, on va traiter les jeunes aussi quand on va traiter les ruraux et vice-versa. Donc, c'est un recoupement et une cohérence entre les différentes cibles. S'il vous plaît, suivant. Par rapport aux principaux résultats qui ont dicté la définition de notre stratégie nationale d'inclusion financière et les données et les disparités qui ont émergé et qui ont justement, comme j'ai dit, dicté le choix aussi bien des leviers, mais des populations prioritaires. Donc, les résultats ont montré une très faible, je dirais, adoption des services financés par les Marocains de manière générale. Des disparités et des écarts significatifs ont été aussi relevés au niveau de certains segments tels que les femmes et les jeunes. À titre d'exemple, devant vous, vous avez donc en matière d'adoption des produits financiers de manière générale, donc aussi bien l'ouverture des comptes, l'utilisation de l'épargne ou du crédit. Vous avez donc en termes d'ouverture de compte, moins 50% comme écart entre les jeunes de moins de 24 ans et les adultes, moins de 54% par rapport à moins de 100% au crédit. Ça veut tout dire et donc ça nous pousse tous ensemble au niveau du Maroc à mettre en place des programmes et des politiques pour l'inclusion des jeunes et dont l'éducation financière donc est partie prenante. S'il vous plaît, la suite. Monsieur Fatouh, tout à l'heure, a bien présenté les causes de l'exclusion financière au niveau de plusieurs pays arabes. En complément ou par rapport au Maroc, ce qui a ressorti principalement de l'étude de l'enquête Findex, c'est le faible niveau de revenus des Marocains comme cause d'exclusion financière, les offres inadaptées aux besoins des segments à faible revenu, la forte utilisation des services financiers informels. Donc, l'enquête a fait relever que les Marocains font par exemple de l'épargne, mais les 2/3 se fait à travers l'informel. Pour les jeunes, donc, il y a également l'exclusion financière qui est fortement liée au niveau de chômage élevé de cette catégorie de la population. Je crois que ce n'est pas le seul cas du Maroc. Elle est également accentuée par le faible niveau d'éducation financière et qui peut s'expliquer en partie par le taux d'analphabétisme. Et au Maroc, on a un taux malheureusement qui est assez élevé d'analphabétisation. S'il vous plaît, la suite. Alors, partant de cela, il y a eu, comme j'ai dit, les leviers stratégiques de la SNIF, mais il y a également plusieurs initiatives transverses qui ont été définies spécialement et propres aux jeunes. Donc, en termes de paiement mobile, et on le comprend depuis tout à l'heure, les panélistes parlent de la digitalisation qu'on est dans le monde entier. Et c'est une offre son service canal financière. Donc, être levier d'inclusion financière, l'accélération par les d'offres planchées, notamment à destination des jeunes. Vu et connu au Maroc, donc plusieurs offres du secteur bancaire destinées aux jeunes avec des frais, enfin avec une gratuité sur plusieurs services bancaires ou des offres préférentielles. Il y a également la dématérialisation des aides de l'État vis-à-vis des jeunes, particulièrement les boursiers, donc qui reçoivent les bourses pour leurs études, et donc c'est une cible et c'est un levier facilement qui peut être facilement mis en œuvre. Et enfin, l'éducation financière, bien sûr, pour les jeunes, à travers la mise en place de programmes adaptés, dédiés à la population jeune, qui, je précise, est très hétérogène. S'il vous plaît, la suite. Donc, je fais la transition directement à l'éducation financière pour les jeunes. Très rapidement, je crois que tout le monde connaît un peu la définition de l'éducation financière, particulièrement pour les jeunes. Et c'est une définition qui est utilisée également dans le PISA. Donc, très bien, oui, je passe. Donc, on la connaît tous, c'est la connaissance, la compréhension et également le développement des attitudes et des comportements pour une gestion responsable et des prises de décision, donc responsables des prises de décision financières, j'entends. J'ajouterais que c'est un processus d'apprentissage continu, donc qui ne s'arrête pas et qui est dynamique tout au long de la vie, qui tient compte des besoins, de la situation des cibles, de l'évolution également des services financiers. Donc, on n'arrêtera jamais de mettre en œuvre des programmes d'éducation financière pour les jeunes et pour toutes les populations. S'il vous plaît, la suite. Alors, juste pour vous situer un peu au niveau du cas du Maroc et certaines particularités en termes d'inclusion et d'éducation financière. On a parlé de la SNIF. Par rapport à l'éducation financière, donc dès le départ, déjà en 2013, et à l'initiative de la Banque centrale, Banque El Maghreb, il y a eu la création de la Fondation marocaine pour l'éducation financière. J'ai oublié de me présenter au départ, donc mon ami Habib l'a fait. Donc, je représente au fait la Fondation marocaine pour l'éducation financière. Je suis actuellement donc la directrice exécutive au sein de cette fondation. Donc, je disais que la fondation a été créée sous le format juridique d'une association à but non lucratif. Elle regroupe 14 membres qui sont des ministères, donc du secteur public, des ministères concernés par l'inclusion et l'éducation financière. Nous retrouvons également les régulateurs, donc Banque El Maghreb, la Banque centrale, mais également les autorités de contrôle des assurances et réassurances, et également donc l'autorité marocaine des marchés de capitaux. Et nous retrouvons tout le secteur financier représenté à travers les fédérations et associations, donc assurances, banques, associations microcrédits et j'en passe. Donc l'idée de création de cette fondation, c'est au fait créer une structure dédiée à l'échelle nationale qui a ce rôle de coordination des initiatives et des programmes d'éducation financière de tous ses membres et également des différents partenaires, et d'éviter également donc les doubles emplois, d'optimiser un peu les ressources et créer des synergies entre le public et privé. Donc un rôle de coordination, mais également de mise en place et mise à disposition de programmes d'éducation financière, tout en respectant les principes de neutralité et d'objectivité, et les mettre à la disposition des différentes parties prenantes qui adhèrent à nos différents programmes d'éducation financière. Donc, par rapport aux jeunes, l'éducation financière, la formation est partie prenante, comme j'ai dit, dans la SNIF. Elle occupe une place choix parce qu'il a été identifié dès le départ comme levier transverse. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire que nous travaillons en étroite collaboration avec les différentes institutions publiques et privées concernant par les différents leviers, en amont et en aval. C'est-à-dire qu'on est partie prenante dans l'inclusion, dans les travaux d'inclusion financière, et ça nous donne de la matière pour justement préparer, accompagner en termes d'éducation financière. Je cite l'exemple, par exemple, du levier paiement mobile. Donc, le travail aux côtés des différentes parties prenantes dans la préparation même des offres sur le paiement mobile nous donne une longueur d'avance pour préparer les programmes d'accompagnement en matière d'éducation financière. C'est le cas aussi pour l'assurance inclusive, donc un travail très étroit avec les collègues de l'autorité de contrôle des assurances, mais également la fédération, pour justement essayer de préparer des programmes d'information, de sensibilisation qui tiennent compte des offres qui sont soit déjà développées en matière d'assurance inclusive ou en cours de développement. Très rapidement, notre modèle de déploiement, donc la fondation s'appuie sur les membres d'abord, s'appuie également sur différents partenaires pour le déploiement des programmes d'éducation financière aux différentes cibles. Pour le cas des jeunes, nous avons mis en place et nous continuons, donc on continue, nous mettons en place des programmes adaptés aux différents segments et sous-segments de cette population. J'ai dit tout à l'heure que c'est une cible très, très hétérogène, effectivement, qui nécessite donc des études et une identification et cartographie des sous-segments de cette grande cible jeune. Nous avons donc mis en place des programmes. Nous diversifions les canaux de déploiement. Nous comptons sur la mobilisation et l'engagement des partenaires, chose que nous avons réussi depuis 2013 donc à mettre en place, à développer et à fidéliser, et puis assurer une coordination à l'échelle nationale à travers donc la fondation avec les différentes parties prenantes. Premier programme au pluriel avec S d'éducation financière donc destiné aux jeunes. Je citerai donc l'intégration de l'éducation financière dans les curricula scolaires. On a un projet qui est à la phase finale, donc dès la rentrée 2021-2022, l'éducation intégrée dans le curricula du primaire. Notre sujet, c'est les jeunes, mais les enfants d'aujourd'hui seront les jeunes et les adultes de demain. Et puis, nous avons réussi avec nos partenaires à l'intégration de l'éducation financière dans la formation professionnelle. La cible jeune de la formation professionnelle, vous le savez, est une cible très, très importante, vu que c'est une population qui, moyennant 1, 2 années, 3 années de formation, est rapidement sur le marché de l'emploi. Et donc, soit en tant qu'employé, salarié, mais également en tant que futur travailleur indépendant, futur auto-entrepreneur, etc. Donc, il était très, très intéressant d'intégrer très rapidement les programmes d'éducation financière pour cette population, chose que nous avons réussi grâce à des collaborations avec l'OFPPT qui est l'Office de formation professionnelle, mais également les établissements de formation professionnelle pour l'artisanat et l'agriculture. Nous avons également intégré, et ça c'est une grande réussite, je me permets donc d'en parler, intégrer l'éducation financière dans les programmes d'alphabétisation avec l'Agence nationale de lutte contre l'analphabétisme au Maroc. Donc, ce sont plus de 30% malheureusement de Marocains qui sont analphabètes et nous avons réussi à intégrer les programmes d'éducation financière dans tous les programmes d'alphabétisation. Et je vais peut-être vous surprendre, nous l'avons même dans les programmes d'alphabétisation fonctionnelle destinés à certains métiers, les femmes détentrices d'activités génératrices de revenus, mais également les artisans, les coopératives et même des détenus dans les prisons, donc dans le cadre des programmes de réinsertion professionnelle de cette catégorie de population. Nous avons également intégré l'éducation financière dans plusieurs programmes d'accompagnement des jeunes, que ce soit à travers des institutions publiques ou également à travers la société civile, des associations qui travaillent avec et pour les jeunes. Et puis, nous collaborons avec l'enseignement supérieur, des universités et des écoles supérieures donc, pour l'intégration de l'éducation financière. D'abord à travers des événements, donc des sessions d'information, de formation, mais nous travaillons également pour l'intégrer de manière générale dans les programmes. S'il vous plaît, la suite. Le digital, on l'a dit, donc c'est un levier incontournable, que ce soit pour l'inclusion financière, pour l'éducation financière. Donc, nous l'avons investi, ça fait plusieurs années. Nous sommes très, très présents sur les réseaux sociaux. Les jeunes au Maroc sont très, très connectés. Plus de 100% des Marocains sont connectés. Plus de 70% ont accès à l'Internet. Plus de 80% ont des smartphones et utilisent publics tels que YouTube, Facebook et Instagram. Et donc, c'est tout à fait naturel que nous investissons donc nos programmes, ces réseaux sociaux à travers nos programmes. Donc, des programmations en continu sur les réseaux sociaux que je viens de citer, des contenus adaptés bien sûr de manière très ludique, adaptés aux réseaux sociaux, sinon personne ne va nous suivre ni lire nos contenus. Nous avons également un portail internet, donc fmef.ma, avec des contenus de référence adaptés aux différentes tranches d'âge, depuis l'enfant, les parents et également donc les jeunes, les gens entrepreneurs aussi. Et puis, nous avons mis en place il y a quelques années une application mise à initiative de gestion du budget qui a été adaptée aussi aux habitudes de paiement des jeunes. Et enfin, une plateforme e-learning pour les entrepreneurs et porteurs de projets, notamment les jeunes. S'il vous plaît, la suite. J'arrive à la fin. Donc, en termes de perspective et en conclusion, je dirais que malgré tous les efforts qu'a connus le Maroc en matière d'inclusion et d'éducation financière pour les jeunes ces dernières années, la crise du Covid nous a montré que nous devons doubler, tripler, en tout cas, nous devons multiplier nos efforts tous pour l'inclusion financière, pour l'éducation financière, pour la résilience financière des jeunes qui ont été très impactés dans nos différents pays par la crise du Covid. Dans ce sens-là, donc, nos perspectives ou nos projets en cours, c'est la conduite de nouvelles études sur les besoins en éducation financière des jeunes au Maroc 15-24 ans, donc pour certains segments et sous-segments. Ensuite, la poursuite des efforts d'intégration des contenus d'éducation dans les programmes nationaux qui visent l'accompagnement des jeunes, notamment ceux du public. Développement de nouveaux programmes, donc répondant aux challenges, aux défis actuels que la crise du Covid, comme j'ai dit, changement climatique, ça a été cité par les panellists et également Ingrid a parlé de finances vertes également, donc, et puis le challenge de l'employabilité des jeunes et l'accompagnement des efforts du secteur financier dans la mise en place de services financiers adaptés aux jeunes à travers les programmes d'éducation financière. Donc, nous sommes très proches du secteur financier parce qu'ils sont membres, mais également parce que nous avons des partenariats avec plusieurs banques et nous avons mis en place des programmes d'éducation financière pour les jeunes sur la base, bien sûr, des offres qui sont de services financiers adaptés à cette population. Et enfin, conduite d'études d'impact des programmes d'éducation financière des jeunes sur leur attitude, donc en comportement, on cible donc un changement d'attitude et de comportement, mais aussi leur inclusion financière, économique et sociale. Et j'arrive à la fin. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Fatima, merci beaucoup. Quand bien même que c'était un petit peu lent par rapport à ce que nous avons prévu, mais c'est absolument fascinant, c'est absolument fascinant, c'est absolument inspirant ce que vous faites au Maroc. Félicitations. Il y a eu quelques coupures de son. Et donc, personnellement, il y a 2-3 questions qui me tombent maintenant sur la tête. Donc, j'y reviendrai vers toi à la session Q&A. Hein. Donc, je vais repasser à l'anglais maintenant. So, thank you so much, Fatima. Before I move to the last speaker, I would like, since Fatima was talking about programs, was talking about different government programs and so on, I have just one question. I would like to get back to Ingrid regarding what she said in the beginning, and I got this question from the audience right now. Tolkien, I mean, you mentioned, Ingrid, in your presentation that there is a need to adopt sort of territorial balanced approaches. Are there any example of successful strategies for the financial inclusion, specifically for youth who are living in a rural area? So over to you, Ingrid.
Thanks a lot,
Ingrid, try to make it very short because we are absolutely running out.
I will.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. No, thanks a lot. A very good question, actually, and I think a very relevant question. My response would be, this is something we should focus on collectively. I'm not aware of, because here you combine 3 aspects, the rural areas, the financial inclusion, and the youth. And that's really a quite specific topic, which is super interesting. And I think it's something we should reflect on for the future. What I mentioned before is we work on these territorial approaches that we support the partner countries, for example, working a lot with Morocco and Tunisia to support them in their territorial dimension. We have a program with OECD where we also work with investment promotion agencies in the region that, for example, investment is not only focused on capitals, but also goes to the rural areas. But on this very specific topic, I think it's something to be prepared. Could be a good idea for the future. Thanks, Habib.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Maybe just to jump on what you have said and to ensure our audience today that the new dimension of the financial inclusion is not, I mean, the traditional financial services, and you know there is many countries, including in the Arab region, but also globally, they are developing the national financial inclusion strategies. And Fatima mentioned the one that has been developed in Morocco, but there is many other countries who have already developed and going and implementing right now the strategies, or others that are on the right to develop their own strategies. And absolutely, the rural and the remote areas are an important part in the financial inclusion strategy. Of course, here the role of the digital, I think, is a key in this matter. Let me. So we heard a lot from, let's say, the development partners, from private sector, from government programs, for instance, for financial education. This is good. This is quite good what we have said, but it's important now to hear from, let's say, academician. It's very important. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you my fourth speaker, who is Mais Shaban. Mais Shaban is a research fellow at Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association, and she's also an assistant professor of banking and finance at Al Zaytuna University in Jordan, with actually a focus on banking or financial stability, banking performance, financial inclusion, and sustainable finance. I think, Mais, we are extremely and excited about what you are going to say to us now, because it's important to hear also to learn from, I mean, the academician, and how you are seeing the topic of financial inclusion, but also financial inclusion for youth. So over to you. You know, we are running out of the time. Try to make it short, simple, and straight to the point. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Habib. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in this very timely and relevant topic or event. So as Habib mentioned, I will be presenting perspective from academia. So I'd like to start by highlighting the importance of financial inclusion for socioeconomic development as evidenced by research. So financial inclusion has become a key objective for governments, policymakers, and development agencies, as it's considered an important enabler for 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals. And financial inclusion efforts mainly aim to improve the living conditions of the most vulnerable, including women and youth, and underprivileged populations, and protect them from any financial problems. And research has shown that financial inclusion can actually decrease income inequality, reduce poverty, increase savings, and poor households' income. Also, for social factors, it plays an important role in enhancing women empowerment, health of children, nutrition, food security, well-being, and so on. It also plays a role in combating money laundering and terrorist financing. And on the long run, it plays a role in the inclusive economic growth, capital accumulation, and productivity. Now, specifically for youth access to financial services, research has shown that it can create opportunities for youth to start up their own businesses, create their own jobs, particularly if it was accompanied with non-financial business development services. It also, another indirect link to employment is that it enables youth to invest in their own education in order to improve their employability and improves their long-term planning. As mentioned by previous speakers, the state of youth financial inclusion by region, the lowest rate of youth financial inclusion is in the Middle East and North Africa, with 34% of young adults having an account, followed by 37% in sub-Saharan Africa. And the age gap is very significant in the region. Now, research shows that youth from poorer households, the least educated, those in rural areas, are the most excluded. However, mobile money accounts, the story is different, as younger adults are more likely to have a mobile money account than older adults. It's also important to note the gender gap. So young women, particularly interested in accessing credit for business purposes, often face a double strike. And the highest gender gap among all regions is in the Middle East and North Africa, at 18% difference between male and female accounts. Now, obstacles to youth financial inclusion, as evidenced by research, first factor is high costs. These are commissions and fees, high interest rates. Also, younger adults may not have enough money to maintain the minimum balance for having an account, whether a current or savings account. High perceived risk, negative stereotypes, especially that they have irregular income flows and smaller deposits. Also mentioned by Habib, legal and regulatory environment. And these are linked to rules and regulations related to age and identification. Sometimes even an employment letter or a university ID is required to open an account. And this is particularly important because a significant number of youth in the region work within the informal economy. Cultural norms also include dependence on family members, their religion and gender issues, inappropriate and inaccessible products and services provided by financial institutions, as they might not take into account the specific characteristics and needs of youth. And finally, limited financial capabilities, financial education, as mentioned also by previous speakers, and experience. So this is related to knowledge, skills that youth need to make sound personal finance decisions. Now, in terms of the impact of COVID and best practices, in fact, COVID highlighted the importance of financial inclusion, and particularly digital financial services, as these services were very important to facilitate access to government support. For example, cash assistance from government to vulnerable households. It's important to ease the impact of movement restrictions and bank branches closures, which is important for transfers, paying salaries, and so on. Reduce reliance on cash, particularly because banknotes are perceived as a medium for the disease transmission. Consequently, public and private sectors promoted the use of digital financial services. For example, Jordan experienced very significant growth in the subscription and use of digital wallets. Tunisia also used digital wallets to distribute social aid in the country. COVID also highlighted the importance of credit guarantee schemes, which contribute to financial inclusion, and their role is very clear during challenging times as a counter-cyclical policy tool. So, based on the obstacles or challenges discussed, it's recommended to develop a youth-friendly, inclusive regulatory environment with minimum requirements for age and identification, work on financial literacy and digital awareness strategies for youth, of course, combined with the infrastructure point raised by Habib and other speakers, So a focus on digital financial literacy, maybe through schools. I know in Jordan now there is a module at the school level and university level on financial education, also utilizing different media platforms. Low-cost access of financial services for youth, maybe waiving fees for this age group. Also increase the competition between financial service providers, whether banks, microfinance institutions, telecommunication companies, and fintechs. And finally, credit guarantee programs tailored to youth financing needs and to enhance productivity and job creation. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Habib.
Mais, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your great presentation. I think it's there is no gap, I would say, between the academician and professional. And absolutely, I mean, I would say from professional point of view, it's important to get all those insights from your side, Mais. So we have completed with different presentations. I have a couple of questions that I got from the chat box from different participants. Let me start. Wissam, I would start with you, or Fatma. And then, yeah, let me start with Wissam. Wissam, you raised two elements in your presentation that are very important. One, it's about the public-private partnership or engagement in this topic, and another one, it's about the financial literacy and financial inclusion. I want to, if you can just very briefly tell us, how do you see from commercial banks or from banking sector this engagement in terms of public-private partnership with, of course, the government, but also with other government entities and programs? How do you see it from your side, to, I mean, concretely on the ground? Of course, we have seen many examples, but I would like to hear from you, from your side more. And second, regarding the second question in terms of the financial education, can you maybe just give us some examples of what banks are doing to raise awareness and build capacity among the consumers in the region?
Yeah, thank you.
Try to do it very quickly, Wissam.
Yes, sure. You know, Habib, the matter of financial inclusion in the worldwide, not only in the MENA region, it's a matter of policy and strategy coming from the public sector and central banks more than a bank's initiative. To the banks, since they are a commercial institution, they would rather dealing with corporate and gaining more profit. So at the bottom line, so we as organization, non-profit organization like Arab Monetary Fund, like OECD, like MED Confederation, we need to push this policy and strategy. We need to work with the government and central bank to create more product and more initiative that banks have to follow this initiative. And I gave in my brief presentation two important examples. One example for the government issue a certificate investment in Egypt, and another example that when a presidential resolution that obliged the bank to make a granting to housing grant to all people with very low income people. So that definitely will encourage them to go and provide them services. Now, briefly, I do believe this is a private-public partnership to achieve a tangible result for financial inclusion, not only pushing the banks. Now, we can witness some banks are really making a good effort about facilitating open an account. However, there's a lot of rules and regulation, the KYC rule, the due diligence, the compliance rule, that makes a lot of obstacles in achieving what we require for financial inclusion. So my point is we need to have this partnership between the public and the private. Now, second question also, very briefly, financial literacy is a crucial element. You know, something I don't know is my enemy. If I don't know how to deal with banks, I will not go to the bank and open an account because I don't trust it. And this is shown in the result. So we also as an organization, we have obligations, not the bank, by the way, also the bank, they will not teach their clients. We as organization, we need to make these services to the public in large. As we have started 5 years ago, we invite students, we invite university students, school students to participate in our seminar. We have arranged special seminars to them and teach them how to deal a bank, how to open an account, what the meaning of checks, what the meaning of saving account, what the meaning of letter of credit. So now they are familiar how to deal with banks and not afraid of dealing with banks. And by the way, in the Arab world, Jordan as example, they included in the school program. This is very good initiative. Jordan and Tunisia and I think Morocco, they are within the school curriculum that they have one course in financial inclusion. And this is something I do believe is very good. So government initiative to go to financial literacy, private sector organization like us also have the responsibility to educate the NGOs and the public in large.
Thank you very much, Wissam. I would like to jump on the first point that you said regarding the public-private partnership and the engagement of both. I mean, the whole ecosystem in this area. And personally, I was very, very happy to see how this partnership moving forward, particularly throughout the COVID-19 crisis, when we see many central banks in the region and outside the region have designed a specific liquidity facilities to support banks in order to make sure that, I mean, they are continuing the business, they are continuing providing liquidity and providing funds to small businesses. And on this specific point about the liquidity, I think this is one important or key driver that I said in the beginning in my presentation, talking about the priorities for financial inclusion and liquidity. And when we talk about liquidity, actually, we are talking about two major elements. One, it's about the diversification of the set of financial service providers from one hand, and from another hand is the collateral and the risks. And for that regard, of course, the role of credit guarantee schemes, it's important. I saw in your.
Habib, can I add just 1 minute?
Please.
We also witnessed example Sultanate Oman, one of the Gulf country. The central bank obliged the banks to reserve 5% at least of their lending goes to microfinance, goes to MSME. That they have to show, they have to make 5% of their lending, especially go to MSME. And you know, also the risk assessment for the compliance, we need also the bank look at the client as low risk assessment and high risk assessment. If I wanna open an account for somebody like $200, $300, that's definitely low risk assessment because the amount of money. So I don't treat him as high risk and make a lot of complications in the compliance field. Thank you.
Absolutely, Wissam. Absolutely, Wissam. And even on this regard, many central banks not only dedicated some liquidity facilities for the banking sector, but also they even revised or make the requirements in terms of financial stability of the bank, of Basel requirements, very lower to allow the banking sector to keep running and funding the
and I should say that the role of a regulatory fund, you put a lot of pressure on central banks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have issued, and even at the IMF, we have issued a set of principles on that regard to make sure that the bankings are balancing, addressing the challenges faced by the crisis, and at the same time make sure that the banking sector and financial sector is robust and sustainable. So in this regard, when we talk about the liquidity, when we talk about the role of credit guarantee schemes, I think it's important. Mais, I think you have co-authored recently one publication. Let me read it here: assessing the role of credit guarantee schemes in the Southern Mediterranean. I think it has been released a few 2 months ago. Just
Yes.
From your side, if you can just tell us the different measures that have been taken by the credit guarantee schemes in the region to support MSMEs, of course, and startups during the COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you, Habib. So yes, as you mentioned, they channeled government support and liquidity facility to vulnerable groups, to businesses in need, and so on. So as you mentioned, working with the Euro-Mediterranean Guarantee Network, EMGN, we've done a survey, we've done a few webinars on this topic. And members from Jordan, Algeria, Morocco, Egypt mentioned that they introduced new measures such as increased coverage, increased risk appetite. They reduced their fees, particularly for startups, which is very important for youth. They accelerated their procedures and they extended their repayments. So some introduced new programs, such as Morocco, for example. They introduced Oxygen program that is tailored for COVID needs, and others just eased their general conditions. And I think dedicated programs with such eased measures can really contribute to the inclusion of youth and women in the region and enhance financial inclusion generally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mais. I see one more, another question from the chat box regarding the financial inclusion for refugees. We are running out of the time, but I will just give you a very brief on this question. Let me take it from my side. Absolutely, the refugees is an important pillar, particularly in the regions like our region, and it's part of the national financial inclusion strategies. And there is many programs that have been developed in some countries. I was thinking about Lebanon, Wissam can confirm, Jordan as well, particularly by facilitating the opening of account through the digital onboarding of the refugees, but also facilitating the use of financial services through the digital wallet and digital mobile banking. I will not go into details since we are running out of the time. Please, the participant who said question, please reach out to us. We can give you more details and even put you in touch with our colleagues from Jordan and Lebanon. Maybe they will give you more details about these different programs. So to make just a balance, Chris, I'm sorry we are running out of the time, but I have two more questions for our Francophone speaker. I will switch to French. Fatima, ce que vous avez évoqué sur l'éducation financière est très important. Et nous, au niveau du Fonds monétaire arabe, après, je vais en parler brièvement sur la journée arabe d'inclusion financière et sur les différentes bouclettes qu'on est en train de produire maintenant, qu'on envoie au ministère des Finances, au ministère de l'Éducation nationale, aux universités pour que les gens s'approprient un petit peu la finance. Je dirais, c'est pas uniquement à apprendre, mais il va falloir qu'ils s'approprient la finance eux-mêmes. J'ai deux questions pour toi, Fatima, mais brièvement, hein, je te donne 1 minute 30 secondes. La première, vous avez parlé de l'importance de la mobilisation des parties prenantes, publiques ou privées, dans les programmes d'éducation financière des jeunes au Maroc. Comment assurez-vous, chez vous, naturellement au Maroc, la coordination des différentes initiatives et leur suivi? Ça, c'est la première question. Et la deuxième question que j'ai pu avoir quand même dans le chat box, c'est pourriez-vous nous parler d'une ou deux expériences réussies de programmes d'éducation financière destinés aux jeunes et visant particulièrement l'inclusion financière de ces jeunes naturellement et par conséquent leur intégration socio-économique de la vie économique en général au Maroc. 1 minute 30 secondes avant de repasser la main à Chris.
Merci Habib.
Je t'en prie.
Très bien. Donc, par rapport à la question sur la coordination, effectivement, donc, vous le savez, que ce soit l'inclusion financière ou l'éducation financière, la mobilisation des parties prenantes est fondamentale pour la réussite de tout programme et toute stratégie d'inclusion financière ou d'éducation financière. Il n'y a pas une structure qui peut prendre en charge tout ce qui les actions et les objectifs de ces deux programmes ou stratégies. Au Maroc, nous avons un grand atout, c'est la création de la fondation en tant qu'institution au fait dédiée et qui connaît l'adhésion à travers ses membres des institutions concernées par aussi bien l'inclusion financière que l'éducation financière. C'est un grand atout. Pourquoi? Parce que ça donne de la légitimité à une structure qui va porter l'éducation financière au Maroc et donc qui va assurer le rôle de coordinateur à travers les différentes parties prenantes. Donc ça c'est un premier élément de réponse. Le deuxième élément, c'est le fait que l'éducation financière est transverse dans la stratégie nationale d'inclusion financière. Là aussi, ça financière une place à l'intérieur de toutes les parties prenantes pour travailler à une grande proximité avec les différentes institutions concernées et essayer de les engager et les mobiliser. Donc, nous avons des opportunités et des occasions pour justement les mobiliser et les engager dans les programmes d'éducation financière visant bien sûr l'inclusion financière. Il y a un modèle de coordination qui a été adopté, approuvé par les membres de la Fondation et qui donc engage les différentes parties prenantes à mettre en place des plans d'action annuels et à les réaliser et à faire des reporting à la Fondation qui élabore et présente le rapport annuel d'éducation financière au niveau du Maroc. J'ai oublié très rapidement de dire qu'au niveau de la Fondation, nous sommes à notre deuxième plan stratégique d'éducation financière 2019-2023. Ce plan stratégique lui-même, il est concerté, c'est une approche participative qui a été adoptée avec tout l'écosystème, que ce soit les membres, mais aussi les parties prenantes concernées. Bien sûr, il y a de l'écoute, de la proximité, la valorisation du travail et des initiatives des différentes parties prenantes et l'occasion et l'opportunité qui leur est donnée de présenter ce qu'ils font en matière d'éducation financière au niveau du conseil d'administration de la Fondation, mais également à travers les différents événements que nous organisons. Je voudrais prendre quelques secondes pour dire que nous avons des expériences réussies avec certaines banques de la place qui ont pris l'éducation financière donc, comme action prioritaire dans le cadre de leur programme de responsabilité sociétale ou encore dans le cadre des les services non financiers offerts à la clientèle. Donc, nous travaillons avec certaines d'entre elles et nous avons mis en place des programmes réussis, notamment pour les jeunes et pour les entrepreneurs. Deuxième question, vous m'avez demandé 2 expériences. Comme j'ai pris beaucoup de temps sur la première question, je me contenterai d'une seule expérience qui concerne au fait un programme très important, lancé fin 2019 par Sa Majesté le Roi et qui est le programme intégré d'appui et de financement des entreprises. C'est un programme qui est destiné aux petites entreprises et aux porteurs de projets et qui, donc, dans l'objectif est le financement, mais pas que le financement. Nous avons connu au Maroc et certainement dans d'autres pays l'échec de certains programmes uniquement de financement, mais ce qu'il apporte de plus, c'est le côté appui et accompagnement. Et dans ce cadre-là, nous avons mis en place un programme qui est intégré à ce programme d'appui et de financement des entreprises avec les parties prenantes concernées d'éducation financière. Donc, un jeune porteur de projet, il suit des programmes d'éducation financière pour l'aider, pour développer ses compétences en amont de le lancement de son projet, avant même le lancement de son projet, pour tout ce qui est business plan, gestion de la trésorerie, etc. Donc, pour préparer le projet, mais également en aval pour mieux gérer son budget, pour mieux gérer sa trésorerie, pour une utilisation responsable des moyens de paiement pour réussir et pérenniser son entreprise. Merci. Je sais que j'ai dépassé, mais désolé.
Non, il n'y a pas de problème, il n'y a pas de problème, tellement si fascinant, tellement si fascinant. Personnellement, je voudrais bien qu'on y reste et qu'on parle longtemps. Je suis quasiment certain que ça doit être le cas de l'ensemble des participants, de comprendre davantage votre expérience marocaine et ce que vous faites. C'est absolument fabuleux. Personnellement, je connais la Fondation, je connais le Banque du Maroc et je connais qu'est-ce qui se fait au Maroc. C'est absolument quelque chose de très intéressant. Et d'ailleurs, il va falloir qu'on pense à comment faire partager cette expérience marocaine avec le reste des pays de la région. So I will switch in English. So what I was saying to Fatima, it was really very exciting what she said. I would love personally to have more time to discuss more and to learn more. I think this is the case of all participants, but the time is running really fast. So we are reaching at the the webinar. What I would like to say from my side, 3 elements what are very important, and I would say even the conclusion of today's discussion. The first element, I will start with what Fatima and colleagues told about, discussed about the financial education. I think is a key. Financial education, financial awareness in the region is a key. And in this regard, maybe many of you heard or know about the Arab Financial Inclusion Day, which is the April 27th. That has been launched 4 years back now by the Council of Arab Central Bank Governors. And every year, all stakeholders, I will not say only central banks, Wissam, he can confirm it, many commercial banks. This is joint exactly what Wissam talked about, the partnership, all commercial banks in the region, la Fondation Marocaine, l'éducation financière, central banks are joining forces to raise awareness and to make on this day really a day for financial inclusion in the region. It's on April 27, and many central banks, by the way, actually, they are organizing this event over 1 week or even 1 month. Okay, this is important. One more element on the financial education. It's good to talk. It's good to network. It's good to organize webinars. But by the end of the day, it's important to set supports for our kids, supports for young population to learn and to read about finance in general. Of course, we are, and I'm sure our partners from MED Confederation are in touch with the Minister of Education in the region to make sure that we are building the right programs. I mean, including, I mean, in the program, particularly for the primary, for the old age sort of financial education programs. In this regard, at the IMF, we have recently developed sort of small booklets related to different aspects, different topics on the financial inclusion, financial sector in general, but financial inclusion specifically, and they are shared on a regular basis with the Minister of Finance, but also Minister of Education in the Arab region, and Minister of yes, Minister of Education, to be circulated, to be disseminated at domestic level. The second element I would like to talk as a summary in terms of different programs and different dimensions of the financial inclusion that we need to consider today. Ingrid mentioned responsible finance and sustainable finance and I think today is key as well. And here, of course, in addition to different programs that are now ongoing in the region, either driven by Wissam and the banking sector, or driven by the IMF and the central banks, or driven by MED Confederation and our European partners, I think now it's a key to, of course, work toward the implementation of such programs at different levels. And this is also an important element. When talking about this topic also, it's about, I come back to my introduction saying, of course, there is a lot of cross-cutting topics, but the main drivers for financial inclusion today is ensuring having the access to liquidity to all consumers, either in urban or citizen or rural, different ages. Of course, youth are important. Small businesses are very important. So credit guarantee schemes are critical. New financial service providers like microfinance industry in the region now is we are coming back to the table to talk about how we can make sure that the financial sector in the region is well diversified, to have many service providers to make sure that we are addressing all needs. This is from one hand, and the risks and the guarantee schemes are very important. Also, this topic, it's on our radar and working on it. And Wissam, I will be happy personally to touch base and talk how the banking sector can be involved. The third message is about the digital. خلاص كما نقولوا باللبنانية خلاص, it's sure, definitely there is no time to waste. At MF and FIARI partners, this is important topic, and we are working towards. And absolutely, the engagement and partnership with MED Confederation, with all our European partners, with WISAM and the banking sector, is key as well to achieve this objective. I don't know if there is final notes or final words from my speakers before I close the webinar. Mais, let me start with Mais. Final words from your side.
Thank you very much, Habib. I think this was a very good event and very informative, and hopefully we can work on this together. Thank you.
Wissam, from your side.
Habib, thank you so much for the excellent moderation. And one sentence: Union of Arab Banks is always ready to cooperate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Wissam. Fatima, de ton côté, un dernier mot?
Merci Habib, très ravi de participer à ce webinaire très intéressant, très important, qui nous ouvre des opportunités de collaboration et de travail ensemble.
طلعت مع الأوروبيين بيعرفوك إنه ما فيك تطلعي.
Okay. So thank you. Merci beaucoup, Fatima. Thank you so much. Thank you once again to our partners, MED Confederation, to Rogi, to Antoine for sitting this webinar. Thanks a lot again for our translators. I think we have been shifting from English to French many times. Of course, this is the normal. Huh? This is the normal. Thanks again to all. Thanks to all participants. Hopefully, we'll see you in another opportunity. Hopefully, face to face. Thank you and take care. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.